This episode is brought to you by Mortgage Workflow Partners and the Mastering Encompass series, both for users as well as administrators. You can find out all the information about it over at masteringencompass.com. Also, if you'd like to check out what we're doing on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe to the channel using the @MasteringEncompass handle. And make sure you stay up to date on all the information, not just with podcasts, but also video content that we bring to you as often as possible. Now let's get on to the episode. Hey, Larry Bailey with Mortgage Workflow Partners. 'Tis the season of Christmas decorations, Chris. I've added more stuff just for you. Welcome, everyone. We meet every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern and Thursday, 1 p.m. Eastern. Today's Tuesday, and so on Tuesdays, we've decided to go ahead and focus in on people and roles. And today's episode is going to all be about quality control best practices and QC like a master at Encompass. Chris says we got our tree up and the house is decked out. Awesome. I think we're going to have like a Christmas decoration off in the community. So if you're listening, go ahead, and whoever wants to be the first up to start a thread. I will warn you that we found some LED C9 lights that you can string 30 of those suckers together, apparently, according to the label. So I'm just saying, like, we have 1,500 feet of lights in addition to everything else. So that's the gauntlet right there. That's the gauntlet I'm throwing down. So this is a community meeting. It's obviously really about everybody here getting ready for all things that are changing. I did want to bring up a couple of things. Sorry for my voice. A couple of things before we get into the topic. First of all, for those that are listening on replays, you're aces. Thank you very much for always wanting to listen to the replay. I hope that you can make it to the event live. The C9s, Candace, are the way to go. They're really inexpensive. And the ones that are opaque, they make clear bulbs, but then they make an opaque bulb that really, they did a nice job. So making these appointments here, making these things here, there is a way to download the calendar from the community. So that way, if you're like me and you live on your calendar, and if it's not on your calendar, you're going to miss it, like me, go ahead and do that. We're going to continue these through for about another 4 weeks. I think we end the second week of December. Then we're going to take a pause and get everybody through the holidays. And then we're going to be coming out with some really, really, really cool stuff next year. I've added in the journey to the web. So there's a new space online here. Let me go ahead and share that on screen here on replay so we can all go ooh and ah. But seriously, it's just a space to making sure that when we get over into Mortgage Community, we've got a space to spend pretty much all next year. And I'm sure it'll bleed into the following year, but over in Mastering Encompass, you've got Encompass Journey to the Web. Go ahead and join up. So basically what this is going to do is give us a focal point of things that we should all be doing as we all move to the web. You can try to kick and scream and not want to go, but you're going. You're coming. And so a couple of things that we're going to be doing next year is focusing in on that journey to the web. We've already been doing that. We had a big partner meeting with ICE this past week, and the question came from ICE, like, who's helping people move to the web? And I got to say, I was one of the few to say we're actually doing something about it, because we've been focusing all year on making sure folks understand how to leverage task-based workflows using workflow tasks, and then, of course, enhanced conditions. And I'm going to repeat the announcement, the PSA here. Please get with your vendors that you have services with. So please get with your credit vendors, flood vendors, appraisers, your VOI, VOD, VOE, whatever. Get with everybody that you're getting any information, your title companies, if you're doing something with an integration that's outside the title center. I'm going to speak to that too real quick. Make sure they're EPC enabled, because you want to get on to leveraging. Right now, you can automate those services. And I know that sounds kind of wild, but you can automate those services. And then you can also, if they're EPC enabled, which is what we're talking about, you can also read the data as it comes back native. So as a good example, the flood is a really simple one. So if the flood cert comes back and it's special hazard, you can actually fire a workflow task to make sure your team goes and fetches flood insurance. You can also, if you're using enhanced conditions, you can also add a condition to the eFolder like that, lights out, no third-party automation needed. So when we talk about like automated underwriting, these kinds of things, obviously we're not talking about OCR. We're not talking about reading the appraisal, but we are talking about with EPC, just like we saw with day one certainty and rep and warrant relief. When you can get to the data source and you can get the data source to come back into the loan file, you can do things with that data. And that's really what EPC is all about. It's about not having to always build third-party interfaces out of your pocket on top of the VIG that you pay to ICE for Encompass for the success-based pricing that we all pay. You should be able to get it from the base pricing. And that's what we advocate for at Mortgage Workflow Partners. It's the whole reason why I built this company up. And it's the whole reason why we continue to do great things. And we're going to be announcing some strategic partnerships and these kinds of things. So Candace says, it's on my project list for next year, but exciting news. We're making recommendations to the bank for the big POS. I think that's great. They're a fantastic company. And if they, if they give you something that's really important that you can't find native in Encompass, I think you should take advantage of it. And I think you should be an active voice with ICE to say like, hey, how come you can't give us something like this, right? Why have to pay extra? Advocate for ICE to keep developing. So listen, real quick on this topic of Journey to the Web. This happened this week, and I want to share it with the community. And by the way, for those that are listening to the replay, you're probably going to get kicked off right now if you're on video. But get over to Mortgage.Community, watch the whole video. There's going to be some really cool stuff we're going to be covering with quality control. I'm going to show you some things to do, some things to think about doing in Encompass, that kind of thing. So there we go. So if you have the situation that a lot of companies do, which you send the title order over through your eFolder because that's secure, and the third party picks it up from Loan Connect. If you didn't know this, their experience is either has changed or it's about to be changed to where they have to have the tokened link to get to the package and to be able to upload back. So the reality is that you can't log in now to like one login and see all the loans. If that's news to you, so be it. If it's not news to you and you've already dealt with it, fine. But I just want to make sure as admins and everybody listening to this that if you've got third parties and they're struggling because they can't find a way back into the Loan Connect for that file for them to upload stuff back to you, that's the reason why the Title Center exists. And that's the so the ways around that, if you don't want to deal with Title Center, obviously is you've got to make the third party's got to find an easy way to keep that tokened link that's tied to the credentials that the package was sent to, because that's the connector to the loan for their credentials. And if you've got an affiliated company and you need some help building technology, give a shout. I can certainly make sure that gets taken care of for you. We can talk more about it. That leads me into the journey to the web. One of the things that we're all going to struggle with is JavaScript. Unless you're a proficient JavaScript writer, which I am not, and maybe you aren't also, you're going to be moving to this. And you might be rolling your eyes right now and be like, wanting to think of happier thoughts. But the reality is it's here. And so what we're going to be working on is, first of all, getting JavaScript snips in here into this specific space under the resource right here. So right now it's empty, but we're going to be having resources listed here for JavaScript snips and other concepts for input form builders to kind of get you moving. Ultimately, if you do need to build custom technology, I'll be speaking to that again next year. For those that need that kind of support. And the biggest thing with the web also is developing custom input forms. So same thing, like it's not hard work, but it's different. And so if you haven't been on here, if you haven't gone to Encompass on the web recently, I would encourage you to. There are a ton, and when I say a ton, I mean 100, 200, like a ton I can't say, you want to say custom input forms because that's what we're all trained to do forever. But you've got custom input forms on the web, but they're sectioned. And so one of the things that I'm trying to drive home with a lot of folks is to change their paradigm on how the Encompass on the web functions versus Encompass desktop, specifically around custom input form creation, as well as code snip usage. Ken Kolda, who actually was the pioneer for Encompass on the web, is retired. And so Ken and I got to spend a lot of time together years ago when LO Connect first came out, and I got to have him explain to me the concept for how it was built. And the idea is you want to get away from individualized experiences, which is what we're all programmed for on Encompass desktop. And you want to get into the frame of mind of repetitive experiences within Encompass on the web. Now, if you're a web developer listening to this, you're like, dude, what's the brand new news? Like, that's the way the web is developed. You don't recreate a widget for every page. You create the widget, and then you point the widget to the pages you want to use it on. Well, that's brand new. We don't do that in desktop. And so from an efficiencies perspective, if we create, like ICE on the demo last week, they created a USPS lookup. I want that. I want that, and I want to put that out there so people can look at it and understand it and read it and see it. And if they won't give it to me, I'll just recreate it and put it on here because it's not hard to do, but the concept of putting that one JavaScript snip, you can now put that in different places, assuming you didn't automate it. But you can put that in different places, kind of like you put a button, but it's just different because it's code. So I don't want to take up the whole meeting for Encompass on the web, but I did want to just let everybody know that, yeah, if you're looking for a great conversation as a community and an ongoing thing, which is, my thing here is to keep us together as a community, as we move to the web, as we go to the web, journey to the web, that's where you can find it on here. So there you go. Hey, who wants to talk about quality control? Does anybody, by the way, I always take a poll. Does anybody actually ever hold the position of quality control representative of your company or workflow? I've held a lot of positions, and I guess I could say I was QC for like a minute, but I was never like, this is your job title, and you sit in a desk somewhere and you constantly are looking for QC. Yeah, and so Candace, yeah, so Luba did Humda. Candace sits next to somebody. Jolene was one of the roles Part plays. So a couple of things. I made a couple of notes here on the role of quality control, and so I'm showing Encompass now. A couple of things that I'm curious about in quality control, and it kind of speaks to underwriting, but it's not really underwriting. It's really over top of underwriting. Yeah, so Robert, perfect timing, Robert. Robert says, I act like Big Brother, so some think he's QC. Candace is always helping with Humda data and automation. And a lot of this comes into QC, and QC evokes a lot of different perspectives. For me, quality control is making sure that the loan quality is being adequately controlled, meaning that we don't have saleable loan sale issues. We don't have compliance issues coming up repeatedly. The last big company I worked at that had a full-scale QC team, they used an outside platform, which is what you're really supposed to do according to most professional guidance, is to have an outside platform to document your QC findings, and then you post those findings into the origination platform. So I'm curious if anybody's actually doing that. When you QC, I know, Jolene, you and I have talked about this, like where do you QC? And you're actually theoretically, again, according to like compliance professionals I've spoken to, you're supposed to QC outside of your LOS for data integrity issues and for the ability to separate resources and to separate the experience. I don't know if anybody else has an opinion on that. Yeah, I think you do, right, Candace? So if you have an auditor, so Candace asks, do we have auditors? Does that count? And I think an auditor, if they're performing the role of quality control, meaning they review the files and they give you citations or they give you findings of your file's quality. Usually it's like 1 to 5. ACEs, thank you, Amy. I could not remember the name of that damn program, ACEs. ACEs is like it's like a DOS program, ACEs Connect. Oh, Reed, you use ACEs also. Oh my God, it's like a flashback to 9 years ago. I'm working with the QC team at AFR. I have no idea what WACWIS is. That sounds like you made that up, Luba. No, I'm kidding. So anyway, the point is you use these other platforms, and then my attitude is always, do you get the conditions back in? And so this kind of leads me into enhanced conditions. And so I'm going to ask the group here, first of all, do you actually put QC conditions into the file for your team to respond to? So now, earlier this year, I helped Kayla implement Encompass. They came off point, and they've got a QC, or at least at the time, Kayla, maybe you could speak to that. You had a QC in there, and literally every single file had to go through QC, and there was conditions in there for that. So that's where I see enhanced conditions being a huge benefit for companies with QC, because you can create a condition type of QC, and you can make sure only specific personas can sign off on them. So Amy says, a lot of notes here. Rob says servicing reviews are documents. Internal, external auditors perform a pre-funding QC person. So Rob, where do they put their findings? Do they create conditions in the eFolder, or is it a document that somebody's got to deal with? Amy says we brought all QC Excel. Robert says Excel. I'm going to speak to that in a second. So Amy says we brought our QC in-house and have a team of people that pre-funding and post-funding. So same thing, Amy, for you. Are you taking those findings and putting them as conditions to the file? And Luba says, oh, wait a minute. Can you keep an eye on UW for moving enhanced condition? Yes, Luba. Yes, you can. And that's a beauty of enhanced conditions. Because again, if you're watching screen here, this is why you got to watch screen if you listen to the replay. But if you come over into eFolder setup and you come into enhanced conditions and you look at condition type, if I wanted to create a QC, right, let's just say I want to just create this as a QC conditions, I can make sure that only the QC role can actually mark this as rejected, cleared, or waived. That you can't do in standard conditions. And so, yeah, ACEs was a big thing. Amy wishes ACEs was integrated with Encompass, but it's not. Going back to the thread here, Candace says, in a sense, my closing manager, process manager, compliance officer, and me are QC. Nothing gets by our closing manager. And so I'm just going to come back, and again, Candace, to you, when you find something, is it being marked as a QC condition or not? And then Amy says, all findings go to ACEs Connect, and you can have them go. Yeah, see, I'm with you, Amy. All that stuff goes in ACEs. And so at the time, AFR wanted me to figure out how to get the findings from ACEs, which is in Excel, I think, at least at the time it was. This is 9 years ago. Get that over into Encompass. And the QC person said no. The QC person said, no, we're going to clear it in ACEs. And when we get it clear in ACEs, then in Encompass, then we'll mark the file cleared from QC. So there was pushback from the QC team saying, no, I'm not going to work in Encompass. I'm going to work in ACEs. And so I'm not sure where that lands for everybody, but that was my experience at that time. Luba asks, what about moving the condition from prior to approval to prior to docs? Yeah, you can. So again, you can do the prior twos whatever you want. Maybe there's a new prior to for you, Luba. Maybe there's a new prior to QC clear. You can make that up, because in enhanced conditions, you set your prior to options for whatever you want. Now that can be dangerous, right? You have to make sure the workflow speaks to the setting that you want. But that's kind of my whole point. This is why I will always beat the drum for enhanced conditions in Encompass, because of conversations like this that other people might not be thinking about. Is you've got an entire QC team who might be working out of ACEs, and you want to get some conditions in Encompass, but you don't want to let everybody else clear them. So what do you do? Now you might try to pull some finagling around with standard conditions by allowed to clear, not allowed to clear, but you can't do that with an underwriter. So enhanced conditions solves for this. Something else that I think is interesting is the idea of, if you have a QC, does anybody use protected document workflow in their loan files, specifically for quality control documents? So this kind of gets back to QC. If the QC underwriter or whoever looks at the file, do you protect any documents that they've reviewed? It's kind of like underwriting, but again, it's different because if the QC is based on something that's in the file at a particular time that anybody else can manage, how do you know what you're really dealing with? So the idea of protecting your documents, if you're not using a protected doc workflow in your Encompass, make sure that you really explore this, because you want to make sure that if you do assign a protected document, so in this system, in this system, everybody's protected role, so it doesn't really matter except for others. So if I assign archiver, it gives you this pop-up. Hopefully you're familiar with this in the protected docs. If you're not, please ask a question. I'll be glad to talk about it. But the idea is somewhere between a protected doc workflow for QC team, and just like you've heard me talk about before with a comparison form. So, I've shown this a couple different times, but, this UW comparison form, you can build these things for anybody. And if you've got a QC team, again, depending on how you want to manage it, if your QC person is always wondering what the hell changed since the last time they looked at it, if that matters, QC comparison form can be important, part of your workflow. So does anybody use, I'm just curious, again, for those that are here today, is anybody using any type of static indicator in a file that the file's been pulled for QC, and that sets up specific either milestone template changes or specific field level requirements or alerts or anything changing on your loan banner up here, anything like that? Because again, so Luba, that's very common. So Luba says manually adding a condition, and and that's okay, meaning that it's fine, it's a condition. One of the things that I always wonder about in people's workflow is who else knows the file got pulled for QC. And so if the file, so Lube, I'll ask you because you answered, but if QC isn't finished, does that mean the file can't be cleared to close? And so Amy adds, we have some custom fields indicating when they're picked or when it's pre or post. Same question for you, Amy. You use custom fields, so is the status of the QC a requirement to be cleared to close, that kind of a thing? And Luba says, yes, PF, prior to PFA condition, prior to funding. I don't know what PFA is. Must be cleared before CTC, but the problem we run into is UW moves the condition prior to that. Well, so your underwriter's kind of undermining your workflow, which sucks. Maybe a good reason to make it a field, right? Because you can block persona access to fields. Maybe that's an idea for you. Amy says can't be approved in underwriting without clearing pre-funding. So Amy, for you, because I know you do non-retail, so it's easy, right? But when you're dealing with retail, how are you communicating that the file is pulled for QC and what that means and what it could do to timelines? I'm honestly just curious. While you're thinking about that, Kirsten adds, we have a custom fields for a QC team. For pre-approval, they add conditions, and there are stops for CTC if items are not cleared. For closed loan QC, we log our third-party results and team responds in a custom form. Kirsten, thanks for bringing up post-closing. I am going to get to that before we end here. So Luba says we're looking at Kenzie May's QA tool, which will change that. Change what? What are you changing with third-party technology? Amy adds, we're usually a 2-day turn time for pre-funding, so it does. Okay, that's cool. Most items are cleared in those 2 days. That's awesome. So it sounds like it's more of like an internal thing. It's never really gone external. I don't find that's always the case with a lot of organizations. So Amy, kudos to you and your team. My public comment on this is, my PSA on this is, if you find that it's affecting even one loan with borrowers, you should constructively notify, my opinion, you should constructively notify the borrowers that their file has been pulled for QC and additional conditions may be added. If that's not already in your language, or if your team feels that that's fine because, it's going to be it's on the approval that additional conditions may be added at any time. Then maybe you don't have to worry about it. But I just feel like going into 2024, I think loans are going to continue to be hard to come by, and I think people are going to continue to be have situations that are a little bit not so easy to underwrite to, and so a QC could really pop that file in a wrong direction if you don't cover yourself. So just be aware. Luba, still follow. Let me know what Kenzima QA tool you're talking about. I'd love to understand that more, because I'm always questioning any third-party tech and why can't we do it natively first. Amy adds, it does happen on correspondent. Everyone's always notified. That's cool. And so Amy, for you, sounds like Amy's got a really solid workflow to making sure that folks are notified, which is awesome. So I want to move to the post-closing QC regulator. It will help with a 10% selection as well as documenting their results. Yeah. Okay. I don't know. I mean, truthfully, that's a platform that should be pulling. Yeah, she is. Candace is definitely. Candace says Amy is the keeper of the queendom, keeper of her queendom. Yeah. I hear you. I hear you, Lou. But I'm just caught up. Just for me, anytime I hear QC, I always want it to be an outside. And if an internal thing is actually figuring out which loans to pull, I don't know. It's just weird to me. But post-closing, last topic on this. So going back to Kirsten made a comment about post-closing. If you're getting post-closing findings, how often are those findings getting back up into workflow? And I hope the answer is every time. So it doesn't mean you're accomplishing it, but the feedback loop from post-closing is phenomenal. It really is one thing that you should really pay attention to and work hard to make sure that feedback is fed back into the front. So this is where a lot of your business rules should come from in terms of quality of the file. This is where a lot of your workflow updates should come from when working on a file. And Amy says this conversation has made me rethink some of the things we're doing, though. Yeah, and I think that's really the conversation, right? And so one size does not fit all. Even though we're all doing mortgages, we all have different clients, we have different workflows, we have different people, we have different resources. And I just want you to always think about why are we doing this? Why are we leveraging why have we not addressed this workflow in a couple of years? Why are we thinking about going to outside of Encompass for whatever the technology is? Why can't Encompass do it? Earlier today, I was kind of throwing around some ideas about ways to move milestones. Hint, hint, Candace. Ways to move milestones through, and it led us, after an hour, it led us to a conversation that we agreed that we were missing a milestone, but it wasn't the one that we thought. Turned out we needed one between processing and underwriting. We thought it was between sales and processing, but it wasn't. So Kirsten adds, yes, investor suspense and third-party audit issues are fed through some managers that request conditions to be. So Kirsten, my question for you is, are you documenting the changes that you're making in the Encompass platform to the things that the QC is finding? Do you do that? In other words, if the manager requests something to be added as a condition or some other type of automation for future files, is that tied to the finding? And the reason why I ask this is because when you go to a regulator or a lawyer and they ask, well, we found this problem, and you're like, yeah, we already did something about it. And they're like, well, what'd you do? And you're like, I know we did something, but I don't remember. So my recommendation is, if you are making changes based upon your findings, please document that somewhere that you can find very, very easily, and you will sleep better at night 10 years from now. If you're still doing this 10 years like me. Kirsten adds, yeah, that's the next part of the loop to close. Yeah, great. And I think everybody can probably, learn from that. I know I can. It's one of the reasons why I use Basecamp for everything that we do, because it's really easy to copy paste and put it into the card and tie the card into what we're doing and close it. And everybody can see it and everybody can search for it. So super slick. So that's post-closing. That was the entire list I had. Does anybody have any other topics before we leave for the day? And I'll go probably eat way too much in a couple of days here. Hopefully everybody's got some time off. Hopefully everybody's able to see their family, whether virtually or in person, and spend time with folks you care about. So I guess not. I'm not seeing anything in the chat. I hope everybody has a wonderful Thanksgiving and spends time with their family and friends. And if nothing else, with yourself, to relax and recharge and refocus. And we'll see you on this next Tuesday. Get your Christmas lights up, dagnabbit. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day. Enjoy the weekend. Happy Thanksgiving. Live long and prosper. See you now. Bye, guys. The lights can go up this weekend. Yay, Jolene. I know Jolene waits. So can't wait to see the pictures. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.